The call came at 3:47 a.m., my son's voice cutting through the darkness like broken glass against my eardrum. "We're leaving tomorrow, Dad. Your beach house has already been sold. Bye." The line went dead before I could even process the words, but I felt my lips curl into something between a smile and a grimace because Marcus had just made the biggest mistake of his entitled life. I sat up in bed, my 72-year-old bones creaking like the floorboards of that very beach house he thought he'd just stolen from me. The moonlight painted silver stripes across my bedroom wall, and for a moment, I just stared at them, remembering how Marcus used to be afraid of shadows like these when he was small. Back when he still called me Papa instead of Dad. Back when his voice held love instead of calculation. Before I dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories like this, please comment, like, and subscribe. It helps me keep sharing more, and I will also reply to all the comments under this video. Marcus hadn't visited me in 3 years. Not since his mother, Elena, passed and left him thinking he was somehow owed everything I'd built with these weathered hands. The beach house, though, that was special. It sat on the Oregon coast, all weathered cedar and salt-kissed windows, watching the Pacific rage and whisper depending on her mood. I'd bought it 40 years ago when Marcus was just 7, back when a factory worker like me could still afford a slice of paradise if he saved every penny and worked double shifts for a decade. But here's what Marcus didn't know, what his greed had blinded him to completely. The house he thought he'd sold, the one he'd somehow convinced himself was his to take, wasn't actually mine anymore. Hadn't been for 2 years. The irony tasted sweet as honey on my tongue as I reached for my phone to call him back. His phone rang 4 times before he answered, and I could hear the satisfaction dripping from his voice like syrup. "What, Dad? I told you, it's done. The paperwork's already filed. The buyers take possession next week." "Marcus," I said, keeping my voice steady as a surgeon's hand, "you forgot one thing." "What are you talking about?" His confidence cracked just slightly, like ice under spring sun. I laughed then. Really laughed. The kind that comes from your belly when the universe serves up justice on a silver platter. "The house you just sold? It hasn't been in my name for 2 years, son." Silence. Beautiful, crystalline silence that stretched between us like a tightrope. "That's impossible," he finally whispered. I checked the county records. William Brennan. Your name. Your signature on everything. "Oh, there's a William Brennan on those papers, all right," I said, walking to my window now, watching the same moon that had witnessed every betrayal, every small cruelty he'd inflicted since Elena died. Just not this one. What Marcus had never bothered to learn in his rush to grab what wasn't his was that there were 2 William Brennans who owned property on that stretch of coast. Me, William James Brennan, and William Paul Brennan, a developer from Portland who'd bought the house 3 doors down from mine 5 years ago. The county records were public, yes, but Marcus had been too arrogant to check the full legal names, too certain of his own cleverness to verify the property address beyond the street name. "You're lying," Marcus said, but his voice had gone thin as paper. "Check the full deed, son. Property address 4247 Seafoam Drive. That's William Paul Brennan's place. Mine, the one you thought you were stealing, is 4244. Different side of the street, different deed, different owner entirely now." I heard him typing frantically, probably pulling up the documents on his laptop. His breathing got shallower with each keystroke. The thing about Marcus was he'd always been smart enough to be dangerous but never quite smart enough to be careful. His mother used to say he had champagne taste on a beer budget mentality, always reaching for things that weren't his to take. "This can't be right," he muttered. "The realtor said." "She confirmed it was your house." "The realtor saw what you showed her, Marcus. A William Brennan property on Seafoam Drive. You never took her to see it, did you? Never walked through the door? Because if you had, you'd have noticed the nautical-themed nightmare that Paul Brennan calls decorating. Ship wheels on every wall. That ridiculous anchor coffee table. Not exactly my style. The beach house I'd actually owned, the one where Marcus had built sandcastles and learned to swim, where Elena had painted watercolors of the sunset, that house was safe. Safer than it had ever been, actually, because 2 years ago I'd done something Marcus would never have expected from his foolish old father. I'd transferred it to a trust. Not just any trust, but one with a very specific beneficiary who'd earned it through kindness rather than demanded it through blood. Who? Marcus's voice cracked like a teenage boy's. Who did you give it to? Someone who actually visits me, Marcus. Someone who remembers that I'm not just a bank account with a pulse. The person I'd given it to was Rosalie, the hospice nurse who'd cared for Elena in her final months. Not romantically, nothing like that. But Rosalie had a daughter, Sophia, who reminded me of what Marcus used to be before money poisoned his heart. Sophia was studying marine biology, spent her summers researching tide pools, and had fallen in love with the coast the way I had 40 years ago. She'd visit me even after Elena passed, bringing groceries, checking my medications, sitting with me on Sunday afternoons just talking about the ocean, about life, about everything and nothing. You gave our family house to a stranger? Marcus's rage finally broke through, hot and ugly. I gave my house to family, I corrected. Just not the family that assumed it was owed to them. I'll contest this. I'll get lawyers. You weren't in your right mind. Mom just died. You were grieving. That nurse took advantage. Try it, I said. And now my voice had edges sharp enough to cut. I have 2 years of documentation, mental competency evaluations, multiple witnesses, even video recordings of me explaining my decision. You know what else I have, Marcus? 3 years of unanswered calls, 3 years of missed birthdays, 3 years of you showing up only when you needed money. The moon had moved across my window now, and I could see my reflection in the glass, an old man with silver hair and tired eyes, but standing straighter than I had in months. There's something about watching your child reveal their true nature that either breaks you or sets you free. Tonight, I felt free. The buyers, Marcus said desperately. I took their deposit, $50,000. If the sale falls through, that's between you and William Paul Brennan's lawyers, I imagine. You did forge his signature, after all, even if you thought it was mine. What would you have done if your own son had called you at 3:47 a.m. to announce he'd stolen from you? Would you have been as calm as I was trying to be? Dad, please. We can work this out. I'll visit more. I'll bring the kids. You don't even have kids, Marcus. I meant, when I do. When Vanessa and I... Vanessa left you 6 months ago. Did you forget you called me drunk that night asking for money for a divorce lawyer? More silence. In the background, I could hear something crash, probably his laptop hitting the wall. Marcus had inherited his mother's beauty but my temper, a dangerous combination that had served him poorly his whole life. You'll regret this, he said finally, his voice low and dangerous. When you're dying alone in some nursing home, when you need someone to sign papers to make decisions, you'll remember this moment. Maybe, I said, looking at the photo of Elena on my nightstand, the one where she's laughing at something off camera, probably one of Marcus's childhood jokes back when he still knew how to make us smile without wanting something in return. But right now, all I remember is the son who used to build sandcastles with me at that beach house, the one who said he'd protect it forever because it was where Mama painted her best sunset. That boy's been gone a long time, Marcus. Longer than you think. This isn't over. No, I agreed. I suppose it's not. He hung up without saying goodbye, but then again, he'd been leaving without saying goodbye for years now. I sat back down on my bed, my hands surprisingly steady. Somewhere out there, William Paul Brennan was about to get a very interesting phone call from his lawyers about someone trying to sell his beach house. Somewhere else, Rosalie and Sophia were sleeping peacefully, not knowing that their future had just been protected from my son's greed. But I knew something Marcus didn't, something that made his betrayal even more pointless than he could imagine. The trust I'd set up for the beach house had one more surprise buried in its paperwork, one more twist that would only reveal itself when the time was right. Because while Marcus thought he was playing chess, I'd been playing a much longer game. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I hadn't called in 6 months. Richard Oakes, estate attorney, old friend, and keeper of secrets. It rang once before he answered, despite the ungodly hour. "William, is it time?" He took the bait, Richard. Tried to sell Paul Brennan's place thinking it was mine. "And the other matter?" I smiled in the darkness. "Let's wait until morning. Let him sweat a little. Then you can inform him about his mother's will. The real one." Because Elena hadn't just left paintings in that beach house. She'd left something else entirely, something that would change everything Marcus thought he knew about his inheritance, his future, and his mother's final wishes. Elena used to make French toast every Sunday morning, thick slices of challah bread soaked in vanilla and cinnamon, the kitchen filling with warmth that had nothing to do with the stove. I was standing in that same kitchen now, 6 a.m., making coffee with hands that trembled not from age but from memory, when my doorbell rang with the kind of insistence that meant lawyers or lies were standing on my porch. Through the peephole I saw Marcus, his expensive suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it, his eyes red-rimmed and wild. Behind him stood a woman I didn't recognize, sharp-faced, and carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly pension. The morning fog rolled in from the street, making them look like ghosts, which seemed appropriate given how Marcus had been haunting my life without actually being in it. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. "Marcus, it's early." "Dad, this is Jennifer Walsh, my attorney. We need to discuss what happened last night." The attorney's handshake was firm but cold, like shaking hands with a marble statue. She smelled of expensive perfume and ambition, the kind of combination that meant she'd destroy anyone for the right price. "Mr. Brennan, we're here to discuss the improper transfer of assets and potential elder abuse by one Rosalie Martinez." I laughed, but it came out bitter as black coffee. "Come in then. But take your shoes off. Elena's rule, and I still honor it." They followed me to the living room, Marcus's eyes scanning everything like he was already cataloging what he'd sell first. The attorney sat precisely on the edge of my couch, knees together, briefcase balanced on her lap like armor. Marcus stood by the fireplace, staring at the family photos he hadn't been part of for years. "Coffee?" I offered, my mother's training in hospitality harder to shake than my son's betrayal. "We're not here for pleasantries," the attorney said. "Mr. Brennan, were you aware that transferring assets while under emotional duress can be contested? That taking advantage of a grieving widower is a crime?" "Is that what Marcus told you? That I was taken advantage of?" I settled into my recliner, the one Elena bought me for my 70th birthday, back when Marcus still showed up for birthdays. "Tell me, Ms. Walsh, did Marcus mention he's tried to sell a house that doesn't belong to either of us?" Her composure cracked slightly. "That's a misunderstanding that's being resolved." A misunderstanding. I tasted the word like something rotten. "Is that what we're calling fraud now?" Marcus finally spoke, his voice rough. "Dad, just sign the house back to me. We can forget this happened. I'll forgive you for giving it to that nurse." "Forgive me?" The coffee mug in my hand was warm, grounding, real in a way this conversation felt surreal. "Like you forgave your mother?" The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Marcus went rigid, his jaw clenching the way it did when he was 7, and I caught him lying about breaking Elena's favorite vase. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You know exactly what it means." The attorney looked between us, clearly sensing she was missing crucial information. "Mr. Brennan, if you could focus on the matter at hand." "The matter at hand," I interrupted, standing now, my 72 years feeling more like 100, "is that my son thinks I'm senile, thinks I don't remember. But I remember everything, Marcus, including the night before your mother died. Do you think children realize how much their parents hear through thin walls? How much we know but don't say?" Marcus had visited Elena exactly 3 times during her 4-month battle with cancer. The first time he'd asked about her life insurance while she was still conscious. The second time, he'd tried to get her to sign power of attorney papers while she was on morphine. The third time, the night before she died, I'd heard him whisper to her unconscious form that it would be better for everyone if she just let go, that the medical bills were destroying my finances, that I'd thank him later for encouraging her to stop fighting. He didn't know I was standing in the hallway, didn't know I heard every word. "That's not—" "You're twisting things," Marcus said, but his face had gone pale as the fog outside. "Ms. Walsh," I said, turning to the attorney, "did Marcus tell you about the DNR?" She blinked. "The do not resuscitate order?" "The one he tried to forge. The one the hospital caught and reported. The one that's still on file with the state medical board." The attorney's professional mask slipped completely. She turned to Marcus with the look of someone realizing they'd been played. "You said there were no complications with your mother's estate." "There aren't," Marcus said quickly. "That was a misunderstanding. Mom was suffering, I was trying to help. You were trying to speed things up," I said, and now my voice was steady as stone. "Because you'd already spent the inheritance you thought was coming. Already promised Vanessa a bigger house, a better life, all funded by your dying mother's assets." The French toast smell was gone now, replaced by something acrid, like burning bridges. I walked to the mantel, picked up a photo of Elena and me on our 40th anniversary, her smile radiant despite the chemo she'd just started. "Here's what you don't know, Marcus, what your mother made sure you'd never know until the time was right. She changed her will 2 weeks before she died, legally, with witnesses, with video testimony, with every possible safeguard against contestation." The attorney was already packing her briefcase, recognizing a losing case when she saw one. But Marcus stood frozen, his face cycling through denial, rage, and something that looked almost like the fear he'd had as a child when he knew he'd crossed a line. "That's impossible. I saw the will. I have a copy." "You have a copy of the old will," I corrected. "The one from 5 years ago, before you showed your true colors, before she heard you on the phone with Vanessa, planning which of her jewelry to sell first." The morning light was streaming through the windows now, catching the dust motes that danced between us like tiny witnesses to this unraveling. My coffee had gone cold, but I drank it anyway, needing something to do with my hands besides reach for the son I'd lost long before this moment. "She left me nothing?" Marcus's voice was small now, almost childlike. "She left you exactly what you gave her in her final months. 3 visits worth." "How much?" I could have dragged it out, could have twisted the knife the way he'd twisted his mother's suffering into an inconvenience. But I was tired, and cruelty had never been my nature, even now. $3,000, $1,000 for each visit. The attorney stood abruptly. "Mr. Brennan, I apologize for the intrusion. Marcus, you'll be receiving my final invoice. This consultation is concluded." She left without looking back, her heels clicking against the hardwood like a countdown to Marcus's complete dissolution. He stood there swaying slightly, looking around the room as if seeing it for the first time. Or maybe the last time. "Dad," he started, but I held up my hand. "The beach house was never about the money, Marcus. It was about the memories, the sandcastles, the sunsets your mother painted, the place where you learned to swim, where you caught your first fish, where you told us you wanted to be a marine biologist before you decided money was more interesting than meaning." I walked to my front door, opened it wide. The fog was lifting, revealing a world that seemed sharper, clearer than it had in years. "Rosalie's daughter Sophia is studying marine biology now. She's 23, the same age you were when you stopped caring about anything but yourself. She sends me videos of octopi, Marcus." "Octopi? When's the last time you sent me anything besides bills you wanted me to pay?" He walked toward the door, each step seeming to age him a year. But just before he crossed the threshold, he turned back, and for just a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who'd held my hand during Elena's first chemo treatment, who'd promised to take care of us both. The rest of Mom's estate, the paintings, the jewelry, the investments. In trust, I said. Managed by Richard Oakes. Available for one purpose only. Which is? You'll find out when you find out. But here's a hint, son. Your mother believed in redemption even when I didn't. Even when you didn't deserve it. He stared at me. Confusion replacing anger. Hope replacing despair. All of it mixing into something raw and unreadable. What does that mean? It means she loved you more than you loved her. It means she saw something in you that I've been trying to see for 3 years. It means the story isn't over, but this chapter is. I started to close the door, but his hand shot out, stopping it. Dad, wait. The trust. What do I have to do? Something you haven't done in 3 years, Marcus. What? Earn it. I closed the door then, gently but finally, and listened to his footsteps fade into the morning. Through the window, I watched him sit in his Tesla, his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking with what might have been sobs or might have been rage. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the letter Elena had written, the one Richard Oakes would deliver in exactly 30 days if Marcus didn't figure it out himself. The one that explained the trust's single condition, the one requirement that would either restore his inheritance or lose it forever. But that revelation would have to wait, because my phone was buzzing with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my blood went cold. It was a photo of Rosalie's house, taken this morning, with a message that made my hands shake. You took what was mine. Now I'll take what's yours. Marcus's car was still in my driveway, but the photo had been taken 20 minutes ago across town, which meant my son wasn't working alone anymore, which meant this was about to get much worse before it got better. The photo of Rosalie's house stayed burned on my phone screen like evidence of my worst mistake, thinking Marcus would simply accept defeat and slink away. 20 minutes had passed since he'd left my driveway, but someone else had been watching Rosalie's home at dawn, someone who knew exactly which strings to pull to make an old man's hands shake. I called Rosalie immediately, my fingers clumsy on the phone keys, listening to each ring like a countdown to disaster. William? Her voice was warm, concerned, completely unaware that my family's poison was about to spill into her life. Is everything okay? It's barely 7 in the morning. Rosalie, listen carefully. Is Sophia with you? She's at the university. Early lab hours. William, what's wrong? You sound... Lock your doors, all of them. Check your windows. Someone's been watching your house. The pause that followed felt like falling, that moment when the ground disappears but you haven't hit bottom yet. I could hear her moving. The click of deadbolts, the rattle of window locks, her breathing getting faster with each secured entry point. William, you're scaring me. Who would be watching my house? Before I could answer, my doorbell rang again. 3 sharp bursts that felt like accusations. Through the peephole this time, I saw Richard Oakes, my estate attorney, his usually composed face tight with something between worry and rage. Behind him stood a woman I recognized but hadn't seen in 2 years. Vanessa, Marcus's ex-wife, looking like she'd aged a decade in those 24 months. I opened the door, phone still pressed to my ear. Rosalie, I need to call you back, but don't go anywhere. Don't answer the door for anyone you don't know. Richard stepped inside without invitation, something he'd never done in 30 years of friendship. William, we have a problem. A significant problem. Vanessa followed, her designer clothes wrinkled, her perfectly manicured nails bitten down to the quick. She looked at me with eyes that held too much knowledge, too much regret. Mr. Brennan, I'm sorry. I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't know Marcus had partners. Partners? The word tasted like copper in my mouth, like blood from biting my tongue too many times. Richard set his briefcase on my coffee table, pulling out documents covered in red ink and sticky notes. Vanessa came to my office at 6 a.m. Tell him what you told me. She sat down uninvited, her hands twisting in her lap, like she was wringing out invisible guilt. Marcus didn't just try to sell your beach house, he's been running a bigger scheme for months. With Gregory. Gregory, Marcus's childhood friend. The one who'd always been there to enable his worst impulses, to validate his greed, to help him justify the unjustifiable. The one who'd stood as best man at Marcus and Vanessa's wedding, who'd laughed when Marcus joked about spending his inheritance before he got it. Gregory Marsh is involved? My voice sounded far away, like someone else was asking the question. He's more than involved, Vanessa said, pulling out her phone, showing me screenshots of text messages that made my stomach turn. They've been planning this since before Elena died. They have a list, William. Every property you own, every investment, every piece of Elena's art collection. They've been systematically finding ways to transfer or steal each one. The French toast smell from this morning was completely gone now, replaced by something that felt like the morning Elena died, that antiseptic hospital smell that meant endings were coming whether you were ready or not. Richard spread out the documents, pointing to highlighted sections with a lawyer's precision. They've filed false liens on 2 of your investment properties, created a fake LLC using a variation of your name, and this morning, about an hour ago, they filed paperwork claiming power of attorney over your assets, citing mental incompetence. But that's impossible. I have all my faculties. I have documentation. They have documentation too, Vanessa interrupted. Forged. Gregory's girlfriend works at a psychiatric facility. She's been creating false evaluation records, backdating them, making it look like you've been showing signs of dementia for 2 years. I sank into my chair, the weight of this betrayal heavier than my 7 decades of life. Outside, birds were singing like this was just another morning, like the world wasn't unraveling thread by careful thread. Why are you telling me this? I asked Vanessa. You divorced Marcus. You could have walked away clean. Her laugh was brittle as winter ice. Because he's threatening to take my daughter. You don't have a... I stopped, the realization hitting me like cold water. You're pregnant? 6 months. Marcus doesn't know. But Gregory does. He's been following me, sending photos to Marcus, building a case that I hid assets during our divorce. If Marcus finds out about the baby, he'll use it as leverage to reopen the settlement. Or worse. What kind of man had I raised? What had I missed in those early years that had let this darkness take root and grow? Richard pulled out another document, this one in Elena's handwriting, her careful cursive still beautiful despite the cancer that had been stealing her strength when she wrote it. William, there's something else. Elena knew this might happen. She left instructions, sealed, only to be opened if Marcus ever tried to harm you or steal from you. My hands trembled as I took the envelope. Inside was a single page, Elena's last message to me about our son, written 2 weeks before she died. The paper smelled faintly of her lavender hand cream, the one she used even in the hospital because she said it reminded her of our garden. My dearest William, it began, if you're reading this, then Marcus has shown you who he really is. I'm sorry I won't be there to face this with you, but I've prepared something he won't expect. The trust I established isn't just about money, it's about truth. Check our safety deposit box at First National, Box 472. What's inside will explain everything. And William, my love, remember that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to earn forgiveness, even when they don't deserve it. I looked up at Richard. You knew about this? Only that it existed. Elena insisted I couldn't read it unless certain conditions were met. Those conditions were met this morning when Marcus filed those false documents. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Another photo. This time it was of Sophia, Rosalie's daughter, walking across her university campus unaware she was being photographed. The message read, Pretty girl. Shame if she had an accident. Drop the trust challenge and transfer the beach house properly. You have 24 hours. Vanessa saw my face change, saw the fear that must have been written there like a confession. What is it? I showed them the phone. Richard immediately began dialing on his own cell. I'm calling the police. This is criminal threat, stalking, intimidation. No, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Not yet. Elena's letter said to check the safety deposit box. We do that first. William, They're threatening an innocent girl. And if we call the police now with Marcus and Gregory's false documentation painting me as incompetent, who do you think they'll believe? The concerned son trying to protect his father's assets, or the supposedly demented old man giving away property to his nurse? The room fell silent except for the grandfather clock Elena had inherited from her mother, its steady tick like a countdown to something inevitable. Vanessa stood up, her hand protective over her belly. "I'll go with you to the bank," she said, "as a witness. Whatever Elena left, it might be the only thing that stops Marcus from destroying everything she loved." Richard was already packing his briefcase. "I'll file injunctions against the false documents, buy us some time. But William, whatever's in that box, it better be enough to stop this." As we prepared to leave, my phone rang. Marcus's number. I almost didn't answer, but something, maybe Elena's spirit or maybe just morbid curiosity, made me accept the call. "Dad?" His voice was different now, harder, like something had crystallized inside him. "I know you got the photos. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign everything over to me the way Mom wanted, or things get ugly for your new family. Your mother wanted nothing of the sort. Mom's dead, Dad. What she wanted doesn't matter anymore. What matters is what I need, and I need you to stop pretending you're some kind of hero in this story. You're just an old man who's about to learn what happens when you choose strangers over blood." Is that what Gregory's telling you? Or is that your own poison talking? There was a pause, then a laugh that sounded nothing like the boy who used to build sandcastles. 24 hours, Dad. Oh, and that safety deposit box you're thinking about visiting? I'd be very careful. Gregory has friends at the bank too. Former employees who still have certain access codes. The line went dead. I looked at Richard and Vanessa, seeing my own fear reflected in their faces. He knows about the box. Richard's face went pale. "If they get there first." "Then we'd better hurry," I said, grabbing Elena's old cardigan from the coat rack, the one that still smelled like her even after 2 years. Because whatever she left in that box, she believed it would save us all. Even Marcus. We stepped out into the morning light, 3 unlikely allies against a betrayal that ran deeper than any of us had imagined. But as Richard's car pulled away from my house, I noticed something that made my blood freeze. Marcus's Tesla, the one I'd watched leave my driveway, was parked 3 houses down, empty but still running, which meant he'd never really left, which meant he'd heard everything, which meant we were walking into a trap, and the only question was whether Elena had anticipated even this. The bank was only 10 minutes away, but it felt like driving toward a reckoning 40 years in the making. In my pocket, Elena's letter seemed to pulse with warmth, like her hand in mine one last time, guiding me toward either salvation or destruction. What would you do if your own flesh and blood had become your greatest threat? Would you still try to save them, or would you let them fall? The answer, I was about to learn, was hidden in box 472, waiting like a secret that could either heal our family or destroy it completely. First National Bank stood like a fortress of secrets at 7:47 a.m., its marble columns catching the morning sun in a way that reminded me of Elena's paintings, how she'd capture light as if it were something you could hold. Richard parked crooked, Vanessa's breathing shallow beside me, and through the glass doors I could see Gregory Marsh standing at the teller window, his smile sharp as broken promises. "He's already here," Vanessa whispered, her hand instinctively protecting her unborn child. "Let him be," I said, though my heart was hammering against my ribs like it wanted to escape. Elena was smarter than all of us. We walked in together, my weathered hand steady now with the kind of resolve that comes from knowing you're walking toward an ending, one way or another. Gregory turned, his face shifting from triumph to confusion, when he saw Vanessa beside me. "Mr. Brennan," he said, smooth as oil on water. "Fancy seeing you here. Marcus said you weren't feeling well. Confusion, memory issues. Shouldn't you be resting?" "My memory's fine, Gregory. Clear enough to remember when you were 12 and I caught you stealing from Marcus's piggy bank. Told you then that taking what wasn't yours would catch up to you eventually. The bank manager appeared, Mrs. Chen, who'd known Elena and me for 20 years. Mr. Brennan, I received a concerning call about unauthorized access to your accounts. Is everything all right? That depends, I said, pulling out Elena's letter and my identification. I need to access safety deposit box 472, Elena's box. Gregory's smile widened. Actually, that box was closed yesterday. Marcus handled it as William's power of attorney. Impossible, Richard interjected, stepping forward with his briefcase. I'm Mr. Brennan's attorney, and no valid power of attorney exists. Mrs. Chen looked between us, clearly sensing the danger in the air. Gentlemen, perhaps we should discuss this in my office. No need, I said, and pulled out my phone to show her something I'd kept hidden for 2 years. A video of Elena, frail but fierce, recorded in the hospital. Mrs. Chen, please watch this. Elena's voice filled the bank lobby, weak but clear. I, Elena Brennan, being of sound mind, hereby establish that safety deposit box 472 at First National Bank can only be accessed by both William Brennan and Mrs. Chen together, with both keys present. Any attempt to access it otherwise should be considered fraud and reported immediately. Gregory's face went white. Mrs. Chen straightened. Mr. Brennan, I have Elena's key in my office safe per her instructions. No one accessed that box yesterday or any day since she passed. That's impossible, Gregory sputtered. Marcus says a lot of things, I interrupted. But Elena knew her son better than he knew himself. We followed Mrs. Chen to the vault, Gregory trailing behind like a shadow losing its darkness in too much light. The box was small, unassuming, but when we opened it together using both keys, what we found inside changed everything I thought I knew about my wife's final days. There were 3 things: a USB drive, a thick manila envelope, and a small velvet box I recognized as the one that had held Elena's engagement ring 47 years ago. Mrs. Chen gave us privacy, but Gregory couldn't leave, as if he knew his fate was sealed inside that metal box. The USB drive went into Richard's laptop. A video file opened, dated 1 week before Elena died. But this time, she wasn't alone. Marcus sat beside her hospital bed, and what I heard next shattered and rebuilt my heart in the same moment. Mom, I'm sorry. Marcus was sobbing, really sobbing, not the performative tears I'd seen at her funeral. I know what I said last week was horrible. I know I'm losing myself. The debts, the gambling, Gregory's schemes. I'm drowning and I don't know how to stop. Elena's hand, so thin the veins showed blue through translucent skin, reached out to touch his face. Then let me help you stop, my love. Let me save you from yourself. How? First, you're going to tell me everything. Every debt, every scheme, every plan you and Gregory have made. And then we're going to create a different ending to this story. The video continued for 43 minutes. Marcus confessed everything. The gambling debts that had reached $200,000, Gregory's hold over him through blackmail about illegal trades Marcus had made at his firm, the plan to take my properties after Elena died. She listened to it all, her eyes never leaving his face, her love never wavering even as her heart was breaking. I'm going to die soon, Elena said when he finished. But I'm going to make sure you live, really live. Not just exist in this shadow life you've created. The trust I'm setting up won't just be money, Marcus. It'll be your redemption if you're brave enough to take it. I don't understand. You will. When the time comes, you'll have a choice. Continue down this path with Gregory, or save yourself by saving others. The beach house your father loves? I'm putting it in a trust for Rosalie's daughter because she reminds me of who you used to be. But Marcus, my darling boy, if you can prove you've changed, if you can show genuine care for someone other than yourself for 1 full year, documented and verified, the entire trust reverts to you. Not just the house, but everything. Marcus's face on the video was stunned, Everything? The investments, the properties, the art collection? Worth approximately $3 million. But only if you earn it through kindness, not theft. Only if you become the man I know you can be. The video ended. I looked at Gregory, whose face had gone from white to green. You didn't know about this conversation, did you? Marcus said she was delirious, said she didn't know what she was saying in those final days. Richard pulled out the manila envelope next. Inside were photos, dozens of them, all taken by a private investigator Elena had hired. Gregory at the casino, Gregory meeting with known criminals, Gregory falsifying documents at his office. But most damning, Gregory placing something in Marcus's drinks at various bars, keeping him hooked on gambling, ensuring his debts grew. She knew. Vanessa gasped. Elena knew you were poisoning him. Gregory backed toward the door, but Richard had already called security. They stood in the doorway, blocking his exit. The last item, the velvet ring box, contained not jewelry, but a tiny key and a note in Elena's handwriting. For the real beach house, the one that matters. I understood then, understood with the kind of clarity that comes like lightning. The house Marcus sold, William Paul Brennan's house. Elena bought it. She bought it 2 years ago under a shell company. Richard was already pulling up property records on his laptop. Seafoam Holdings LLC, registered to Elena Brennan. She bought 4247 Seafoam Drive for $800,000 cash. But why? Vanessa asked. Because she knew Marcus would try to steal the wrong one, I said, feeling Elena's genius wrap around me like her arms used to. She set the perfect trap. Let him commit fraud trying to sell a house she secretly owned, creating evidence of his crimes while protecting our actual beach house. My phone rang. Marcus. Dad, something's wrong. The buyers for the beach house, they're saying the sale is void. They're threatening to sue me for fraud. And Gregory's not answering his phone. Gregory's here with me, son, at the bank. Would you like to know what was in your mother's safety deposit box? Silence, then a broken whisper. She knew. She knew everything. And she loved you anyway. Loved you enough to create a path back to who you used to be. The trust. Vanessa told you about the trust? I looked at Vanessa, who nodded. Your ex-wife showed more courage this morning than you've shown in years. She also showed something else. Tell him, Vanessa. She took the phone, her voice steady. Marcus, I'm pregnant. 6 months. It's yours. And if you don't stop this, if you don't take your mother's offer of redemption, our child will grow up knowing their father chose greed over grace. I could hear Marcus breathing, ragged and real. Where are you? First National. The same bank where you proposed to Vanessa. Where your mother and I opened our first joint account. Where you deposited your first paycheck and were so proud you bought us dinner with your own money. I remember. Then remember who you were, Marcus, and decide who you want to be. 20 minutes later, he walked through the bank doors. Not the aggressive, entitled man from this morning, but someone hollowed out and ready to be filled with something better. He looked at Gregory, handcuffed now, and being led away by police Richard had called. You drugged me, kept me gambling. Gregory spit at his feet. You were weak. I just profited from it. Marcus watched his childhood friend disappear, then turned to me. The house I tried to sell. Your mother bought it. She knew you'd target it instead of ours. Every crime you committed was against her estate, which means it's forgiven if you accept her terms. 1 year of documented kindness. 1 year of being the son she believed you could be, starting with apologizing to Rosalie and Sophia for the threats. He pulled out his phone, showed me the messages. I didn't send those. That was all Gregory. I didn't know until an hour ago when I saw them on his phone. Richard confirmed it with the metadata, Gregory's number behind the anonymous threats. One more crime to add to his growing list. The trust, Dad. What exactly do I have to do? I handed him the final document from the envelope, Elena's handwritten instructions. Volunteer at the hospice where she died. 3 days a week. For 1 year. Care for strangers the way you should have cared for her, that's it, that's all. Marcus held the paper like it was made of spun glass. And if I do this? Then you inherit everything. The real beach house, the investments, the paintings, but more importantly, you inherit the chance to be the man your mother saw in you, even when no one else could. And if I fail? Then it all goes to charity, every penny, and you'll have to live with knowing you had 2 chances at redemption and chose neither. Marcus looked at Vanessa's belly, at the future growing inside her. Would you let me be involved with the baby? Earn it, she said simply. Earn the right to be a father by learning how to be a son again. He nodded, tears falling freely now. Not the manipulative tears of this morning, but the real grief he'd been avoiding for 2 years. The first patient I help at the hospice. I want to tell them about Mom. About how she saved me even after she was gone. Tell them about the beach house too, I said, pulling him into an embrace that felt like forgiveness and boundaries all at once. Tell them how trying to steal the wrong house led you to the right life. 6 months later, I stood in the actual beach house, our beach house, watching the sunset Elena would have painted in shades of amber and hope. Marcus was there, holding his newborn daughter, named Elena, after the grandmother who'd orchestrated all our salvations. He'd completed half his year at the hospice where they now called him their most dedicated volunteer. Rosalie and Sophia were there too, Sophia showing us her latest research on octopi intelligence, how they solve problems in ways humans never expect. Rather fitting, I thought, considering how Elena had solved ours. Dad, Marcus said, his daughter sleeping against his chest. I never asked. How did Mom know I'd picked the wrong house? I smiled, remembering Elena's words from that final week. Because I raised him, I know his shortcuts, his assumptions. He'll see William Brennan on Seafoam Drive and never check further. His greed will make him sloppy, and his sloppiness will save him. She knew you better than you knew yourself, I said. She knew you'd try to take the easy path. And she knew that sometimes, the wrong path leads to the right destination. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in colors Elena had captured 1,000 times, but never got tired of seeing. And in that moment, I understood the final lesson she'd left us all. Sometimes love means letting someone fail just enough to finally succeed. Sometimes the house you try to steal isn't the treasure at all. It's the journey back to who you were meant to be. Do you believe people can change? That redemption is possible even for those who seem lost? Marcus is proof that sometimes it takes losing everything you thought you wanted to find what you actually need. And sometimes, just sometimes, the wrong house leads you home. If this story touched you, please share your thoughts below. Have you ever seen someone choose redemption when revenge seemed justified? And remember, subscribe if you want to hear more stories about the unexpected ways love finds justice.